Look at a neighbor and tell your neighbor, trust God and ruin your enemy's plans. Tell somebody else, trust God and ruin your enemy's plans. Tell your neighbor, your enemies has devised a plan against you. But tell them, if you trust God, you will spoil that plan. Understand this morning that all of us have enemies. I said all of us have enemies. We have people who would love to harm or to injure us. You have folk who would just love to see you go under. I said, you got folk that would love to see you lose everything you got. Now listen, when it comes to enemies, understand some of these enemies, we know them. We know who they are. Tell your neighbor, he right about that. Tell your neighbor, I know some of my enemies. Tap somebody and say, I know there are some folk that don't like me. I already know it. I don't know exactly why they don't like me. I don't know exactly what their problem is with me. But I do know that person don't like me. But on the other hand, because you and I are not all knowing, there are also enemies that we are unaware of. I want to go so far as to say that when it comes to some of you, some folk that you actually call friends are in actuality enemies. Folk that smile in your face and say wonderful things in your presence, but when they're outside of your presence, they saying things in order to hurt you. Yeah. Some of these folk you some kin to. Some of these folk you work with. Watch this. And some of them you attend church with. Folk that say one thing to you in your face, but something totally different behind your back. Woo, I wish you high five somebody and shout, show he right, show he right. Ooh, you ought to tell your neighbor folk can be a trip sometimes. I'm talking about these are some folk you done helped out in time past. These are some folk that you done gave your last money to. These are some people that you pray for. I'm telling you, you have to recognize that there are people that will try to get close to you in order to destroy you. There are people that will try to get close to you in order to figure out how they can hurt you, how they can ruin your family, how they can destroy your marriage and get inside your head in order to mess you slap up. You have to realize that you have enemies. And this is the reason, because we're not all knowing, we really have to trust in God. See, I want to trust a God that can see farther than what I can see. I want to trust God and rely upon him, so when my enemy is about to stab me in the back, God can take care of something that I can't even see. It only happens when we really trust God. I said when we're solid. When we're fixed, when we're living by faith or by the word of God, God will take care of you, child of God. He'll take care of you against powerful enemies. He'll take care of you. I said he'll take care of you enemies that have authority, that have a little bit of power, that know more than you know, that can do a little bit more than you can do. Let me tell you something. When you put your trust in God, God will take care of you despite how powerful your enemy may be. Come on, because there are folk that's rising up against some of us. You can't deny they got power. You can't deny they got authority. You can't deny that they're in a position where they get to make certain decisions. But I like what the word said, that even the king heart, come on here somebody, is in the hand of the Lord, and like rivers of water, he turn it whatever way please him. Don't you know that God will use your enemies to bless you? God will set you up and cause people that don't like you to go out of their way and help you. Pastor, that ain't ever happened to me. You ain't trust God the way you need to then. Because when you really trust God the way you need to, your enemies become his enemies. That's the reason he said, touch not my anointed and do my prophet no harm. See, the preacher is not only God's anointed. If you say you are the anointed of God. And when folk mess with you, they messing with the God that you serve. Now, when you look at the main character in Acts 12, Peter, I love when I research Peter and study his life, because Peter actually encourages me. Let me say that again. I said, when I look at Peter, he encourages me in a big time way. You say, how so, Pastor? Because when I look at how far this man of God came, it always lets me know that you can mature in the things of God. See, there may be somebody here this morning that you know you're not where you need to be. You might have even messed up. You might have even blown it in a major way. But see, when you begin to look at the life of Peter, it lets us know that even when you mess up, even when you fall, don't you stay down. You got to get back up. You got to know you serve a God that'll give you a second chance. You got to know that you serve a God that want to bless you even when it looked like you have messed up, when it looked like you have blown it in a major way. When I look at Peter, he shows me a man that matured in God. And the Peter that you see in the text this morning was not always in that place. When we look in the Gospels, we see Peter at times, listen carefully, not really trusting God the way he needed to. I'm talking about when you look at Peter back when they arrested Jesus, we see Peter at the side of the fire denying, listen, that he even knew Jesus. Denying it to the point to where he began to curse or to say out of his mouth that which he had no business saying. Why? Because he allowed the situation to so get to him that he denied the one that had been better to him than anybody. But when you get to Acts 12, you're looking at a mature Peter. You're looking at a Peter that has recovered. You're looking at a Peter that has been restored. And what is written for our learning. Tell your neighbor, that's where you got to pay attention this morning. Notice in Acts 12 and 1, it starts out by talking about King Herod and showing us some of his power or authority. Now, about that time, Herod the king stretched out his hand to harass some in the church. He killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded farther to seize Peter also. Now, notice, it's all in God's sovereign plan. Because God in his sovereignty allows Herod to stretch forth his hand against some in the church, listen carefully, even to the point to where many died. And God did not step in to prevent it. And he went so far as to allow Herod to even capture or arrest Peter and put him in prison, intending to kill him. Tell your neighbor, even when God allow certain things to happen in your life that you don't like at all, you still need to trust him. Now look at somebody and tell them, get real up in here. There are things that God permit in your life to take place that you don't like. Tell that to somebody and tell them, there are things that God permits to happen in your life that you don't like at all. Some of us going through some stuff right now. We know God has permitted it. We know God is allowing it. But if the truth be told, we don't like it one bit. If it was up to us, we'd be out of that thing right now, and we never would go through any difficulty, any hard trial. Am I talking about you? You have to recognize that God will permit things to happen that he know you don't like. How many realize that? Some of you going through stuff right now. Even God know that you got a problem with what he's allowing to happen in your life. But you know what? You got to trust God to the point to where you know God is not allowing this to happen to destroy me. No. God is allowing this thing into my life so that it can make me. God is allowing certain things to happen in order to cause me to mature. Can I step back and say God will allow things to happen in your life so that you don't think more of yourself than you need to? Some of what we're going through is to keep us humble. He ain't gonna let you get the big head. Especially folk that God be giving revelation to, that he be using. Sometimes he got to permit something to enter into your life that'll keep you humble. Something that'll keep you on your knees. Something that'll keep you fasting. Something that'll keep you praying. Y'all know I'm right about it. Paul said he had received an abundance of revelation. But because of how God was using the man, he allowed a trial to come against him that was painful. Listen, you got to know that, child of God. God allows stuff to enter into our life to humble you. He took Israel through the wilderness in order to humble them. When I'm done with you, you're going to give me the praise for what I bless you with. When you get your degree, you ain't going to be up there talking about how smart you were and how you aced every test. When you get your degree, you going to let folk know if it hadn't been for my God, it was God that helped me out. Come on, tell your neighbor, he's just allowing it to happen to humble you.